UFC Fight Night, Yadong Song versus Simón. Welcome to another UFC prediction and analysis video from yours truly here at Boxing MMA Picks. He goes by Zan, I go by Harris as usual. Fight by fight breakdown and analysis from that betting perspective. We want to let you know which fights are worth the value, which fights to avoid, which underdog has the best shot at winning, and some parlay action for the end of the video as well. Make sure you hit the thumbs up on this video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel here at Boxing MMA Picks. And most importantly, we want to hear from you in the comments. Now, for this UFC Fight Night, it is taking place at the UFC Apex in Vegas. We have just 11 fights. There was one fight that was canceled. So we're looking at just 11 fights. 5 of them are going to be on the prelims, and the final 6 fights will occur on the main card. So not something that we see often, but we will see it for this event. We're going to get started right away. Fight number 1 of our prelims. And let's take a look at Hailey Cowan versus Jamey-Lyn Horth. For Hailey Cowan, she's making her UFC debut. She's coming from Dana White Contender Series, Invicta, LFA before that. She's on a 2-fight winning streak. She's a southpaw. She's light on her feet. She has a lot of in and out movement. Pretty good diversity with her striking. She does have a few weapons. She does have good combinations, good strength in the clinch. She likes to wear on her opponents with that clinch. That said, takedown defense is not amazing. Both of her losses are via submission. She's not clueless on the ground by any means. Like, her top game is solid, but I would say her ground game is sort of the weak point of her game, and the way that opponents beat her, I would say she's much stronger with her striking. And she's going up against Jamey-Lyn Horth, undefeated Canadian, also making her UFC debut. She hasn't fought since December 2021, so over or just about a year and a half, I should say. Look for switch stance from her on the feet. She has a kick-heavy approach, not afraid to throw the punches in bunches, not afraid to engage with her opponents. She is super tough. I would say not really the highest level striker, but definitely capable of holding her own. She's going to want to work that clinch. She's going to want to look for takedowns. She has solid top control from what I've seen. Again, just 5 fights, so you're not going to get a large sample size from her, but 2 submission victories amongst those. All 5 of her wins are also via finish, most of them in round 3. So that tells you that she's dangerous throughout the fight. That tells you the cardio's there. And again, that tells you that the toughness is there. Close fight to get us started. I mean, I'm paying attention to Jamey-Lyn Horth coming up in weight for this fight. This one's taking place at 135 pounds. And the reason why I'm highlighting that is because Hailey Cowan is pretty strong, right? I can see Hailey Cowan potentially winning those clinch situations as the bigger, stronger girl. In general, though, I am looking at this fight as Hailey Cowan having the striking advantage, Jamey-Lyn Horth as having the ground advantage. And I'm going to side with the ground advantage. I'm going to side with Jamey-Lyn Horth. I think that the move up in weight, it might be too much. So there is, some risk there. We see, even decent fighters like Lupi Godinez jump up in weight and have problems. So something like that could happen here, right? But to me, Hailey Cowan just doesn't have the best takedown defense. So I can still see Jamey-Lyn Horth finding ways to bring this fight to the mat, establishing control time, establishing top control. Again, Cowan is the better striker, but I do believe that Horth can keep up with the striking. And I mean, if I'm picking a prop, a submission victory for Horth wouldn't really surprise me here. But let's just keep it at a pick. I'm going to go with Jamey-Lyn Horth to get us started.
Okay, women's MMA. So, this is one of those fights you got to be really, really careful with as far as betting goes. Cowan, I'm not impressed, man. She's really, really green. She was a former gymnast, so she's really, really physically strong, as Harris indicated. And this is her weight class, so she's going to be the bigger girl. But Jamey-Lyn Horth was not a small 125er, so I think she's going to be able to. I think she's going to carry her size well in this fight. I don't think there's going to be a big size difference here. As far as the skills, when I was watching Jamey-Lyn Horth in 2019, I think it was, I was not impressed. And then I seen her fights 2 years later, 2021, I think it was, and she was a far better fighter. Like, she's definitely improving. And it was a big jump because literally, if I stopped studying her after that first fight in 2019, because I was like, this is a wrap here. Um, if I stopped there, I would definitely go with Cowan in this fight. But in the fights after what I've seen from Jamey-Lyn Horth, I think she has the better striking. I think she's slightly the better striker. I think she's slightly the better grappler. So I think she should win this fight. And when you look at Hailey Cowan's like who she's fought, she lost to a 1-2 fighter in Kelly Clayton, and that was just in September 2020. So that's around 2021 around. That's around two years and a bit. And she lost, or she won a split decision to Brittany Cloudy that I thought she lost that fight. On the Contender Series, she beat a 7-2 fighter that I thought she lost that fight as well. It was a really close fight, but I really thought the Claudia Leite won that third round. So when you really look at Hailey Cowan, she drops the ball. She's really not that good. She gets away with her athleticism and her strength. But I think in a fight like this, I think Jamey-Lyn's going to be able to, as the fight goes on, take over, get a takedown here or there, and stay at range. She has really good footwork with her striking. She moves around really well, pot shots, and get this to the mat. Or even on the feet, I think she can beat her in a striking battle. So I have to go with Jamey-Lyn Horth because I do have her better than Cowan in every area by a bit, aside from the strength. So Jamey-Lyn is my pick.
Fight number 2, Journey Newson versus Marcus McGhee. This is a catchweight fight as McGhee is a last-minute fill-in. He's filling in for Brian Kelleher in this one. But Journey Newson, let's start with him. Unanimous decision loss to Sergey Morozov. That was back in December. Look for him to fight from the outside. A lot of movement, a lot of kicks to keep it at distance. He's going to pick his shots. He is a bit unorthodox, has a decent jab, has some power. He can be explosive as well. But if you're on the betting side of Newson, there's a few things you don't love about him. You don't love his lack of takedown defense, just 43%. You don't love his lack of activity. You look at his significant strikes landed per minute. He kind of moves at a sparring pace in terms of his pace, his activity, his punching. Just doesn't really, you don't really see much of it. You don't like the lack of diversity in his game. So he's never going to be that fighter coming forward. He's never going to really actively look for takedowns. He really only has that one style where he's fighting from the outside, and that makes him a tough bet no matter who he's going up against. He's going up against Marcus McGhee in this one, as I mentioned, newcomer, making a short notice for this one. Coming from LFA, a very short notice fight for him, but he fought back in January for what that's worth. I mean, he may still be in shape from that. 6 wins, all 6 of them via KO, TKO. Solid striker. He picks his shots well. He's pretty patient. He can be explosive. Has a little bit of switch stance to his game. Likes to be that fighter coming forward. Likes to be that fighter closing distance, looking to land. This fight's not easy to predict by any means, despite Marcus McGhee being, the short notice newcomer here. And I say that because both of these guys are going to implement the style that they want, right? McGhee is going to be able to come forward, close distance. Newson's going to be able to be that fighter fighting from the outside with a lot of movement. But I mean, ultimately, almost by default, and this has no confidence behind it, but almost by default, I have to go with Journey Newson. I have to think full training camp. I have to think UFC experience. Even just considering their styles, you imagine that Journey Newson's movement might be a little bit too much for Marcus McGhee. I think as long as Newson doesn't get impatient, as long as Newson doesn't lose focus, he should be able to win the striking exchanges from the outside pretty much all fight. So I'm going to go with Newson. I'm not interested in betting on this one at all. I mean, I don't even know what the odds are for it. I know McGhee was just announced, but I'm going to assume Newson's the favorite. I'm going to pick Newson here, but I'm going to recommend completely staying away from a betting perspective.
Yeah, this is a really tough fight. Who's favored in this one?
I don't think the odds are out yet, so I don't even know.
Okay. I think I see on Bet Online. I think he was 190 minus 194. Journey Newson, I think, if I remember correctly. Well, I was just trying to confirm. But this is a tough one here because Marcus McGhee is coming in short notice. Journey Newson, he's like 1 win, 3 losses in the UFC. He's not a winner, right? So having him as a favorite, which I think he is, a decent favorite. And he's a guy that you can't really trust because he has lost in the UFC. He had two good fights, one against Domingo Pilarte, knocked him out. Fight was overturned, but he looked really good in that fight against Fernie Garcia. Really good IQ was showing there, good counters, moved around the ring, showed really good leg kicks. That's what he's going to want to do in this fight. He's going to want to stay away from the power. Marcus McGhee is a strong physical fighter, and Marcus McGhee is going to march you down, as Harris indicated. He's going to want to close that gap, and he does have hands. He does have power in his hands, and he also has leg kicks. But I think he throws a more conviction than Newson as far as the leg kicks go. It's a tough one. I think that can go either way. Who hurts who first? Journey Newson has been training for this fight, so he should be more prepared for the 3 round. But Marcus McGhee's a guy I've been following, man, because I know he's really cool with Kyler Phillips. And I know he does a lot of work. These guys are gym rats, and I'm sure he's ready for this fight. Like Harris said, he just fought in January. I think he's prepared here. I think he's going to be in shape. He probably was already preparing for a fight, or he's the type of guy, looks like he stays ready. And I can't trust Journey. And I think Journey's a decent sized favorite here, where I think Marcus McGhee can close that gap. First round, I see it going to Journey. Frustrating McGhee with his movement, his counter punches, his leg kicks, his speed. He has really fast counters. But I see as the fight goes on, second round, where you're not as quick as you are, because he's going to need that movement, that speed. I think as the fight goes on, he's going to slow down a bit. And that's when Marcus McGhee can really get going with his strikes, slow him down with the leg kicks. And I think he could hurt Journey. Journey has been KO'd, knocked out by Benito Lopez. He has been knocked out by, what was that guy's name here? Oh man, forgot the name. But he's been knocked out twice. Randy Costa. So I think Marcus McGhee actually has more power here. I think he can really put the lights out. So I'm going to go Marcus McGhee, upset here. Again, the odds aren't there, but I'm pretty sure he's the underdog, and I think he gets the win here.
Fight number 3, let's talk about Stephanie Egger versus Irina Alekseeva. Stephanie Egger beat Ailin Perez back in September. She's a judo-style fighter, judo black belt. She's okay in the stand-up, decent jab, decent straight punch, decent movement. She's fairly basic in her ability, though, although it is serviceable for her. Doesn't handle pressure too well, but one thing I like about her is that she is going to use that pressure to her advantage with her judo. She's pretty solid on the ground. She has pretty decent takedown defense, also a good clinch. And again, like I mentioned, with that judo, good judo takedowns, especially in those compromised positions when, fighters are potentially landing takedowns against her. She'll try to reverse it. If fighters are putting too much pressure on her, she'll reverse it and find those judo takedown opportunities. So I do like that from her. Good top control, good positional improvement to go along with it. She's pretty effective, pretty crafty. Irina Alekseeva, she's making her debut. She last competed October 2021. Solid hands was the first thing that I noticed from her. Combinations are there. Pop on her punches, that's there as well. Looks like she wants to be that fighter coming forward. Not completely one-dimensional either. A few fighters have tried submissions on her, and she has defended it well from what I've seen. I have seen her land a takedown or two. I have seen aggressive ground and pound from her. Also has a submission victory to her name. But one thing that I do notice about Irina Alekseeva is that her cardio is pretty concerning. I've seen her gas out in her fights. I think, going straight to the point, I think Stephanie Egger should be the smarter pick here as the more complete MMA fighter. Alekseeva can definitely give her problems with the striking, but I think that Egger has a more well-rounded game to do a bit more throughout the fight. Egger, of course, is used to fighters being aggressive toward her. Again, using those judo takedowns to her advantage, and I can see that being a factor here. Alekseeva has shown me shaky cardio, like I mentioned. I can see that being a factor, right? And Alekseeva hasn't fought in 18 months, so I can see that especially being something to watch out for. So ultimately, I'm looking at Stephanie Egger landing takedowns in every round, winning unanimously, being able to handle the pressure on the feet, and then especially as the fight goes on, the threat of Irina Alekseeva goes significantly down. So I think Egger gets it done, crafty veteran at this point, and pulls out the win.
Yeah, I don't see any threat coming from Irina Alekseeva. I'm going Stephanie Egger as well. Because prior to this fight, Irina's been fighting pretty low level, but she's not getting any finish. She got one finish in armbar, but or she actually got another fight finish. Her first fight, the other fighter actually verbally quit. But that's really low level, right? And she doesn't show me that power that she might have the striking advantage, but she doesn't show me that she can hurt Egger on the feet to get some sort of finish here. So I don't actually think she has a shot here, man. I think the odds are this for a reason. I see Egger getting this to the mat as the fight goes on. I know Egger can go the 3 rounds, and I'm not sure Irina can. So I think this fight's going to look a bit more one-sided as the fight goes on. But I do like Stephanie Egger to use her grappling advantage. And I think she gets it done here, man. I think she's just a couple levels ahead of Irina at this point.
All right, let's talk fight number 4. And we're talking Cody Durden versus Charles Johnson. Cody Durden had that unanimous decision win over Carlos Mota back in October. Decent on the feet. He's actually introduced as a striker. Wouldn't really consider him to be a high-level striker, but nonetheless, the calf kicks are looking good lately. He does pick his shots well. He does move at a good pace. The movement is looking a little bit better as well, especially with that in and out movement. To me, Cody Durden, more of a wrestler, right? He has solid wrestling. We see his takedown numbers there are pretty healthy. Really likes that single leg takedown specifically. Good good shot attempts, good chain wrestling, good top control if he does get you down. The striking defense is something that hasn't really been the best in the past, but again, his movement's a little better. Also, his cardio hasn't been the best in the past, but it did hold in his last fight, right? So improvements on the side of Cody Durden. And you know, he's one of those fighters that can do a little bit of everything, not awful in any one area. Charles Johnson, on the other hand, had a split decision loss to Ode Osborne. That was just 2 months ago. He's gonna have a solid switch stance, Muay Thai type of approach on the feet, very patient, high IQ, fights from the outside, good head movement, just solid overall movement, good jab, good calf kick. He's really composed and really picks his shots well. His combinations are pretty clean. Takedown defense is pretty good, all things considered. If he is taken down, he can work his way back up. And, you know, he does have some offensive wrestling ability as well. I have seen him land takedowns. I have seen that ground IQ be a part of his game, even though it's not a strong part of his game. And the cardio is absolutely there. This fight's interesting. I mean, we see Charles Johnson as the favorite. We saw Charles Johnson kind of underperform in his last fight, but he's gonna have a full camp for this one, right? So I don't expect them to look as the way that he did in his last fight when he only had a 2-week notice. Cody Durden has looked pretty good for in his last 2 fights, so this one's hard to predict, right? Charles Johnson, although he has good takedown defense, although he is good at getting up once he's taken down, what's still a fact is that he gives up takedowns in every fight that he's in, right? So I can see Cody Durden landing a few takedowns. I can see Cody Durden having some moments on the ground. It really is going to be a question of, will it be enough to swing the round in his favor? Will the judges be counting what he potentially does once he lands the takedown? Cody Durden does have some striking. Again, he's introduced as a striker, but to me, Charles Johnson should be better on the feet, better timing, better accuracy. Again, Cody Durden doesn't really have the best striking defense. So, I mean, when I look at this fight, ultimately, I'm looking at a 50-50 fight. And I say that because both fighters have kind of let me down. Neither fighter has shown me that, they're a higher caliber fighter. I think that Cody Durden has good value as an underdog. I think he has legitimate ways to score rounds in his favor. And again, I mentioned the takedowns. But I'm going to side with Charles Johnson on this one. I think the striking discrepancy will show. I don't think Durden's going to be able to do much with his takedowns, especially as the fight carries on. And, again, Durden, he has seemingly fixed that cardio, but I think that it's fair to say Charles Johnson is more trustworthy to be able to outlast Durden and again, find an easier time stuffing those takedowns as the fight goes on. So I think that Charles Johnson, as this fight goes on, he will start to pick him apart on the feet. He'll pull out a decision in his favor. And I mean, we know that unsuccessful takedowns really work against fighters. And I can see that happening to Cody Durden as this one goes on. So I like Charles Johnson to get it done. I can't say this is a confident pick, but I think that he does return to the win column.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep.
This is a crazy fight. I like these strikers versus grappler fights. This is another one. But Charles has good takedown, decent takedown defense, a good get-up game, though. So he's able to get back to his feet. But in this fight, I think he's going to have a real hard time with Cody Durden and that pressure. Charles is not going to be able to stuff these takedowns. And Cody's able to put on that pressure for two rounds for sure. He's going to be able to go for takedowns for 2 rounds. Third round, if he gets a chance, he'll get it to the mat. But I see Cody Durden giving Charles a lot of problems, man. And Charles is just squeaking by, right? Against Zhalgas Zhumagulov, he got the win, but I picked Charles in that fight, but I really thought he lost that fight. Jimmy Flick, good win. But again, Jimmy was out of the game for a while, couldn't get the fight to the mat because he has bad takedowns. And on the feet, Charles was able to shine. Cody is getting better in his striking. He's actually hurting fighters on the feet. And I think he can mix up that striking, get the double leg, get on top. And Cody is good on top. He's able to hold that position. And I think he's going to utilize that here, man. I like Cody Durden here as an underdog. And I think he gets the win here.
All right, let's talk fight number 5. Final fight of our prelims. We have a pick'em in the heavyweight division, Martin Buday versus Jake Collier. Buday had that split decision win over Lucas Brzeski back in August. He's on a 10-fight winning streak now. Decent stand-up. He's in control, tight with the hands. He's pretty technically sound. He fights coming forward, really likes to close that distance, has a solid jab, has solid combinations as well. And in sort of true heavyweight fashion, look for that sort of clinched dirty box tactic. Once he does close distance, he's good at sort of just putting his weight on you. He's a big guy, put his weight on you, clinch, dirty box, good stamina. So he's able to do that for all 3 rounds as well. And that's sort of how he pulls fights in his favor. Jake Collier, on the other hand, 2-fight losing streak. He lost to Chris Barnett back in September. He's pretty light on his feet as a heavyweight. Decent movement around the ring. He's looked for some switch stance out of him as well. Really likes that calf kick. Really likes to implement the fakes and the level changes. His jab is solid. The striking is pretty clean. Combinations are there for him as well. And, he's somebody who is a decent all around, decent clinch. He's going to stay active. He's landing takedowns in a bit more of his fights. 4 takedowns landed in his last 3 fights. So really, rounding out the game. His last fight, though, showed me, and I'm talking about Jake Collier here. His last fight showed me that, maybe he can't really take it as much as he can dish it. He emptied the tank against Chris Barnett, could not get him out of there, gassed immediately, and then he ended up being finished, right? But this one to me is tricky because Martin Buday, not really that high level of a fighter to me, right? Collier is probably the better overall fighter if you consider all, the entire MMA skill set. Collier has also shown me a little bit more specifically with that ground game. What I like about Buday is that he's going to continue to come forward, not afraid to engage. He's tough. The timing is there. The accuracy is there. But again, I'm going back and forth. I'm even kind of thinking in real time. Again, Collier is the better talent here, but I'm gonna pick Buday. I think his style specifically in this fight will make him a little bit more effective. I think Collier doesn't really have the cardio to try to be a wrestler for 3 rounds, if that was going to be an advantage that he has. So, and again, I don't know if Collier can take it as much as he can dish it. So something tells me that Buday is going to clip Jake Collier. Heavyweight fight. Anyone can hurt anyone. Sometimes it is a matter of who catches who first. I think Buday can catch Collier, land that fight-changing punch, potentially end the fight. Of course, I can't call this a confident pick, but I am going to go with Martin Buday.
Yeah, this is a tough one, man, because you watch Martin Buday strike, man, it's horrible, right? And but he's really good in the clinch. He's good at tying you up. Does a lot of clinch work, and I think that he could use that in this fight to tire him down, tire Collier down. I think Collier's cardio is weak point at this point in his game. As the fight goes on, third round he's out of it. Second round he's severely slowing down, so he's kind of a first round fighter if you put on the pace. And I think Buday's relentless clinching, laying on top. It's boring. It's going to be a boring fight. I think he's going to hold him against the cage and just score a lot of knees, body shots. And I think he's going to do a lot of work here. So, because you also got to think, man, it's hard to pick. It's hard to pick Collier because when you look at Collier, man, he's one of the holy grail in that heavyweight division with Parker Porter, Josh Parisian. You know those guys. There's a couple other guys in that group, right? They're just really low level. They're just put in to lose. And I think Collier is close to that. I think he's going to be a part of that group after this fight. So again, fight can go either way. If Collier comes out hot, he can definitely win this fight because I think he's the better striker. But if he doesn't put him out, and Collier's power hasn't really translated to heavyweight, he hasn't really put guys out with that power in this division. So it hasn't translated well. So if he doesn't put him out, I think as the fight goes on, Buday's just going to lay on top of him against the cage. And it's going to be a boring fight, but he's going to do a lot of clinch work. And I see Buday getting his hand raised.
All right, let's talk main card activity. 6 fights overall. First fight of our main card, Josh Quinlan versus Trey Waters, welterweight fight. In this one, Quinlan beat Jason Witt in his August debut. He's introduced as a Muay Thai and a BJJ fighter. A lot of movement on the feet, a lot of fakes and feints, pressuring when he needs to, fighting from the outside when he needs to. He has good striking speed, good striking technique as well, and he can definitely be explosive. Good power, of course. Just 6 fights, but 100% finish rate. He's going to use a lot of switch stance. And, you know, I've seen him just from a diversity perspective. I've seen him sort of resort to brute strength to bring fights to the ground rather than technique per se. So he's more of a striker than anything else, but he can sort of have that other layer to his game with strength more than technique. Trey Waters, UFC newcomer. He fought in LFA just 2 weeks ago. Pretty tall, pretty long for the division. He fights from range. He's patient. He's methodical. Has a really good calf kick and a really good long jab. Short notice fight for Trey Waters, but should still be in shape. I mean, again, he fought just 2 weeks ago. But I'll keep this short. I think Josh Quinlan should get it done. Waters' style, to me, I think it works well against fighters who aren't really going to push a pace on him. Fighters who are going to allow him to slow down the pace, to make it a more methodical, tactical striking fight. And Quinlan won't do that, right? I'm not really comparing Quinlan to Gabriel Bonfim, but why do I bring that name up? Watch Gabriel Bonfim versus Trey Waters on Contender Series. Bonfim was pushing the pressure. Bonfim had the higher striking pace. Waters had some moments, but the pace and the forward pressure was a little bit too much. I'm anticipating Josh Quinlan having those same components in his style. And I think it will be too much for Trey Waters. I think Josh Quinlan could potentially get him out of there early. So I'm going to make my pick, Josh Quinlan. I think he's just more effective in this spot.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. I see Josh connecting, landing. Problem with Trey Waters, he has his hands down a lot. He gets too comfortable in there. He's 6'5". He doesn't really use his reach the best way he could. And he's not as active as he should be, and that's a problem because Quinlan as well is not that active guy. But when they do strike, I think Quinlan's gonna be able to find that chin. I think he could put him away. I'm not sure Waters is ready for this step up. He's been fighting a lot of low level guys, so this is a huge step up, in my opinion. He got his fight on last couple weeks against Jalen Fuller. He got caught in that fight. His head was just hanging. I just don't like the way he hangs his head out there. And now you're fighting a guy, Quinlan, who can knock you out with his right or his left hand. So I see Quinlan finding the shot here, and I see him getting the win. But Waters is a 6'5" fighter, so you got to be careful. He could come out here, throw some knees. He has knee finishes. He has finished people with his knees before, so he could throw a knee that comes out of nowhere. But aside from some super Hail Mary shot, I think Quinlan's gonna be the one landing the big shot to finish the fight. So I got to go Josh Quinlan. Scary power. I think he connects and gets the win.
Second fight of our main card, Marcos Rogério de Lima versus Waldo Cortes-Acosta. For Cortes-Acosta, he beat Chase Sherman back in November to stay undefeated, 9-0 at this point. He's a striker, former boxer, good jab, uses it really well to control pace, to control distance, to set up combinations as well. He again, he can land solid combinations to that point. He doesn't really swing wildly, doesn't really waste his punches. Good overall work rate as well. Hands are pretty fast. And I mean, again, he's a striker, right? So don't expect any takedowns from him. Just 66% takedown defense as well, which could be something to look out for in this fight because De Lima, Marcos Rogério de Lima, has some takedowns to his game, right? One per fight, 50% accuracy. More importantly, he can keep guys down. He can stay in top control. He has decent ground and pound, and definitely can't underestimate his grappling. I mean, Brazilian, right? Cardio has been a concern for Marcos Rogério de Lima in the past. Forgot to mention he beat Andrei Arlovsky back in October. Thing with him as well is that he's introduced as a striker, right? Very explosive, especially early in the fight. Good kicks, good hands, very dangerous in that early part of the fight. I'm thinking through this fight, and I have to think that Marcos Rogério de Lima is the smarter pick here. Cortes-Acosta may be better technically with the striking, but De Lima is dangerous, right? De Lima has that power. De Lima has that explosiveness. And just in general, I do think his striking keeps up. Then I want to think about De Lima having the advantage pretty much everywhere else. Because again, Cortes-Acosta is a striker. Although De Lima has shown cardio issues in the past, I think he can effectively use takedowns, use top control to kind of conserve his energy, to win rounds, to kind of wear on Cortes-Acosta to a point where his striking won't be as effective. Of course, anything can happen because it is a heavyweight fight, but again, I have to think that Marcos Rogério de Lima is the smarter pick here, the better overall fighter, the more experienced MMA fighter here, and you're getting decent odds for it, in my opinion. I wouldn't bet it because it still is a heavyweight fight, but Marcos Rogério de Lima is my pick.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. De Lima all day here, man. Because when I look at De Lima, he's a real UFC fighter. He's been in the game. He's fought the who's who. He's fought really good fighters. And when I look at Waldo Acosta, he's a baseball player turning into a UFC fighter, right? So he's kind of like a Greg Hardy in that sense. He was playing sports. Those guys come in here with that athleticism. They knock out a lot of guys, and then once it gets to the high level, the knockouts slow down, or people start figuring them out because obviously the UFC is where the best guys are, right? And in the UFC, Waldo Acosta's power hasn't really translated. Okay, Jared Vanderaa has only been finished once, so he's hard to finish. But Chase Sherman is a guy that his chin is gone, and he wasn't able to put him away. He had 3 rounds to do that. So his power hasn't really translated. I'm not really impressed with this guy. His striking, I'm not even sure he's the better striker because De Lima throws those leg kicks, and that's obviously a kryptonite for Acosta. Acosta made Jared Vanderaa look like Wonder Boy with those leg kicks. The way he was throwing so many leg kicks and that were really effective. And a lot of people, or some people, thought Vanderaa won that fight with those leg kicks. I could see De Lima coming out with the same strategy, throwing those leg kicks. I think in the boxing, I think De Lima is just as dangerous as Acosta in a sense that who lands that heavy shot, who can really get the best shots going. They both will land. They both don't have the best striking defense. It's not like we're watching high-level boxing here. These guys, even if someone has a striking advantage, this is not high-level boxing. So these guys are both going to land. They're both going to hurt each other. But I got to go with De Lima having the more tools to hurt them. The leg kicks, the takedowns, the grappling. And I actually think the Lima has the power advantage. I'm not impressed with Acosta, man. So I got to go with the Lima, the vet here. And I think he gets it done, man. I like the odds. So I'm going to go with the Lima here for the win.
Fight number 3, let's take a look at Julian Erosa versus Fernando Padilla. For Erosa, he lost to Alex Caceres back in December. Solid MMA stand-up. He is introduced as a striker. Mixes it up pretty well. Good diversity on the feet. Keeps coming forward. Keeps cutting the ring off. Keeps cutting the distance off. Likes to engage. Has a good, consistent pace about him as well. And he's one of those fighters that are well-rounded, right? I wouldn't really call him a ground specialist by any means, but he lands, just shy of 2 takedowns per fight. He's at 48% from an accuracy perspective. He's landed 7 takedowns during the 3-fight winning streak that he was on before losing to Alex Caceres. So again, good overall fighter that can do a little bit of everything. Taking on Fernando Padilla as a UFC newcomer. Padilla's on a 2-fight winning streak. Has not competed in 2 years, though. May 2021. 14 wins, 12 finishes, 8 of those finishes via submission. I think the striking is patient. Don't think it's that great otherwise. He does have good constant pressure, good regular jab to set things up. Combinations are pretty solid as well, and the technique is pretty solid. I'll be honest, I'm surprised by the odds of this one. I'd be surprised if Fernando Padilla pulls this one off because to me, his style just doesn't really look UFC ready. I think he's used to being the taller, longer fighter, but he's going to be up against a fighter in Erosa who's just as tall, who has almost just as much reach as he does. Erosa just 61% takedown defense, but I haven't really seen much wrestling from Fernando Padilla to believe that, he's able to bring the fight to the ground at will. And with the striking, although Padilla has decent striking technique, I think at this level, there's a different level of speed. There's a different level of movement. Erosa has been here. I think Erosa is going to have key advantages on the feet. Ultimately, I think he's going to be able to outstrike Fernando Padilla. And also you want to consider that Padilla slows down a bit as the fight carries on. Plus coming off of a 2-year layoff. So I'm looking at Julian Erosa to get it done pretty comfortably. Of course, the X factor is that 2 years off for a 26-year-old fighter could mean a completely different fighter coming back. But if I'm basing it off of 24-year-old Fernando Padilla, I can pretty comfortably say that Julian Erosa gets it done here. Of course, there is some question marks, but I'm going to go based on what I see. And I like Julian Erosa in this spot.
Okay, now one thing we know with Julian Erosa, even when he's a favorite, he's hard to really trust because every fight he's in, he makes it a war. He's right in front of these guys. Anyone can get knocked out. He's not taking the safe approach in fights. He just goes out there and goes up to you head to head. And he's throwing hands and he's taking shots and he's giving shots. So it's kind of a reckless style. And as far as I see 84% are confident he wins. It's tough just because of his style. He's going to go out there and make this a war. And who wins the war wins the fight. And both guys are going to have opportunities to land their shots to win the fight. Julian Erosa, I think, has the more fight-ending ability in this fight. Fernando Padilla, one thing I really noticed, he is tall. But one thing I really noticed, I actually think he's taller than Erosa. Obviously, we're going to find out. Just the way he looked in the ring there, he looked really, really tall. We know Erosa is tall as well. But Padilla has really bad footwork. He has really slow feet. He's not really moving around that ring using the real estate. One thing I do like about him is his return shots. He'll return combos. That's where you see that Mexican in him. He just throws flurries off. That's pretty much his counter. He counters your shot with combos, and that's a good thing to have in the UFC. He could hurt Erosa if he lands one of those counters and throws those combos. He could finish Erosa with his hands, but I think Erosa has more ways to finish. Erosa has been tested. Erosa has the cardio to go that 3 rounds, and Erosa can put on a pace. And I think in this fight he should put on a pace and tire out Padilla. So I like Erosa in this spot. Striking, I think Erosa can hurt him. I think the striking is pretty close, but I think Erosa is just the more well-rounded guy. And I think Erosa can actually get some takedowns here as well. So I'm going to go Julian Erosa for the win.
Fourth fight, Rodolfo Vieira versus Cody Brundage. For Vieira, unanimous decision loss to Chris Curtis. That was almost a year ago, back in June. BJJ specialist. We know he's a black belt, 5-time Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu world champion as well. Has the wrestling, has the combat sambo accolades as well. Unsurprisingly, good takedown game in MMA. He's well versed on the ground with the wrestling, with the grappling. The stand-up isn't terrible. I mean, it is serviceable. It has some technique, has, you know, improved movement. Biggest thing with Rodolfo Vieira is super questionable cardio, of course. Same thing can be said about Cody Brundage. Maybe not as bad, but cardio is a concern for him. I have seen him slow down in his fights, so let's look out for that. He lost to Michał Oleksiejczuk back in December. His stand-up is decent. It's a lot of stick and move, a lot of level changes, a lot of fakes, mixes in the striking with the wrestling. To that point, I believe that, you know, more than anything, he is a wrestler. The entries are solid. He can land the takedowns. The takedown defense is pretty decent to go along with it. This fight was originally supposed to happen, I think, back in November at the time. And ultimately what this fight's going to come down to is whether or not Brundage can fend off those takedowns, right? You want to think about Vieira's last fight, very different opponent in Chris Curtis, because Chris Curtis is very hard to take down. But, you know, Vieira didn't land a single takedown in his last fight after making several attempts. This is supposed to be an extremely strong wrestler, an extremely physical specimen, a great grappler. Wasn't able to take Chris Curtis down, although Curtis, amazing takedown defense. So I don't really want to use that too much. But, you know, Cody Brundage, just 68% takedown defense. Vieira will land takedowns on him, but I don't know for how many rounds Vieira will be able to land takedowns. I think that Brundage, for the most part, will be able to keep it on the feet for most of the fight. I think that for the most part, he should have no problem outpointing Rodolfo Vieira on the feet. So I'm making kind of a bold pick here because Brundage is a pretty sizable underdog, but I'm not a fan of Vieira's game at all. I think it's too heavily predicated on the wrestling. I don't think his striking is strong enough to set that up. And I don't think his cardio is good enough to even maintain the wrestling. So I would expect very strong first round from Rodolfo Vieira, but potentially fading as the fight goes on. Cody Brundage, to me, gets probably a split decision type of fight here. So I'm going with the underdog, Cody Brundage. I think he gets it done.
Yeah, betting wise, this is a dog or pass all day, man. You got to go. If you're going to bet on this, you have to take Cody Brundage. But for me, for the video, I'm going to go with Rodolfo Vieira. I think this is a fight that he could win. Brundage doesn't have the best striking, doesn't have the best chin. And Brundage loves to grapple. He might initiate the grappling himself just by going autopilot. That's his natural reaction in certain situations is to grapple. And that's Rodolfo's game. I could see Rodolfo getting this done in that first round. But again, if this fight stretches out, it could get sticky. But I do like Vieira, man. I think even if it does get out of that first round, I think Vieira has had a lot of time to improve that part of his game. That his cardio shouldn't be as bad as it was in that what was the guy's name? Hernandez's fight. So I'm gonna go Vieira to get the win here. I'm not impressed with Cody. I think Vieira, being a specialist, is gonna have a big advantage in a certain area that's important in this fight. I can see him locking up a submission, getting a guillotine. I'm going Vieira for the win.
All right, let's talk co-main event. In that case, we have Caio Borralho versus Michał Oleksiejczuk. For Borralho, he had a unanimous decision win over Mahmoud Muradov back in October. He's on a 12-fight winning streak now at this point. Southpaw, light on the feet, karate-style striker in some ways. Throws a lot of kicks, unsurprisingly. Has a long jab, has good movement, good striking accuracy as well. He can also be explosive. He can also play that counter-puncher role. But this is a fighter who is very strong in terms of his ground game. Good grappling, good top control. He's been training with Demian Maia for a number of years. So you imagine what that means for his grappling. He finds ways to end up on top of you, or he finds ways to, take control of your back. Good at keeping opponents down, good at draining them. But above all, I think his greatest strength to me is his IQ. Really knows how to win rounds, really knows how to win fights, and really knows how to play to his strengths. Michał Oleksiejczuk is on a 2-fight winning streak in his own right. Beat Cody Brundage back in December. Of course, we just talked about that. He's a southpaw. He's a quick starter, very high-paced fighter, going to be coming forward at all times. Oleksiejczuk moves pretty well, a lot of head movement, continuous in and out movement, continuous usage of fakes and feints, constant pressure, constant pace, constant activity. He's a lot to deal with. The striking legit power. The technique is cleaning up as well. And this, don't be confused. This is a high level fight, right? And we say it all the time, or especially recently on this channel, high level fights, anything can happen. There are reasons to like both guys. Both guys can implement their style. Both guys are effective at playing to their strengths. So I would say be a little careful here. I thought the odds were minus 300, but it looks like they've ballooned a bit to minus 370 in some sports books. Could be a little bit of a trap because Oleksiejczuk, again, is a lot to handle on the feet. But ultimately, I'm going to trust Caio Borralho's IQ, right? We know that he's gone up against very dangerous strikers. He's been able to stay out of danger. He's been able to control distance well. He's been able to play to his strengths. I can see him doing that here. I can see him landing takedowns on Oleksiejczuk, who doesn't have the best takedown defense. I think it's like in the 43% or something like that, similar to his accuracy, if I'm not mistaken. I can see Borralho ultimately staying out of danger, frustrating Oleksiejczuk, landing the takedowns, having the ground control time, and really just, again, putting rounds in his favor. This is a fighter who doesn't care to entertain the crowd. This is a fighter who's really just caring about getting the wins, putting the wins together. So I think Caio Borralho gets it done. I'd be a little careful with that minus 370 because it is a higher level fight. But when you look at it analytically, you kind of have to go Caio Borralho. So Borralho's going to be my pick for this one.
Yeah, you can't go any other way on this fight, man. This is going to be a one-sided fight. We basically have a really well-rounded fighter in Caio Borralho versus a kickboxer, boxer type of fighter. Caio's going to be able to dictate that grappling, and Michał does not have the best get-ups. And Caio is super skilled on the mat. He does jiu-jitsu tournaments. It's really high level. And his striking, he's not a fish out of water in striking. In the area of the striking, he's going to have the kicking advantage. He moves really well in and out. So I see him getting some good takedowns here, getting on top, getting the finish. I don't see this getting to the judges here. I'm not like this is a lock, right? I think Borralho gets it done. I don't see how he loses this one.
All right, let's talk main event, entertaining fight, bantamweight division, Song Yadong versus Ricky Simón. For Yadong Song or Song Yadong, he lost to Corey Sandhagen back in September. We know he's really well-rounded as a striker, technically sound with his boxing, pretty patient, good combinations, good movement, and can't forget that he's still just 25 years old. So this is someone who is getting better every fight. Again, those combinations look good. The striking speed is something that is a bit underrated with him. And the toughness is there. The cardio is there. He's one of those fighters that is ready for that main event five round setting. Ricky Simón is ready for that too. He beat Jack Shore back in July. He's pretty complete as a fighter. Emphasis on his wrestling. He's usually going to be the fighter controlling center. Usually going to be the fighter coming forward, cutting the ring off. Good power on his punches, or good pop on his punches, I should say, at the very least. His boxing is pretty clean. The kickboxing is pretty clean as well. He's going to pick his shots well. But with Simón, it's the takedown attempts. It's the top control. It's the chain wrestling. He has that grinded out type of wrestling. We see his numbers there are extremely impressive. 6.5 takedowns per fight at over 50% accuracy. And his cardio doesn't give up with that approach that he takes. So there really is a lot to like about him, right? I think Simón, in my opinion, is one of the dark horses in the division for me. And I say that as I say that I like him in this spot. I like Ricky Simón to get it done. I think that Yadong has the striking advantage. but Simón is not far behind by any means. I think, he has worked on his striking a lot, and he has a lot to show with his striking. Song Yadong also doesn't really have an overwhelming style on the feet. So I don't really see him just steamrolling through Ricky Simón, for example. And then, yes, Song Yadong does have some takedowns. I think he landed 2 takedowns in his last fight. But Ricky Simón, again, just so relentless in that area. He's landing multiple takedowns against everyone that he's fighting. And I'm anticipating Simón, just giving Song Yadong a very frustrating fight. Landing takedowns, staying at a danger. Outside of that, Yadong, again, just doesn't have like a crazy high pace to run over Simón. So I can see Simón just spamming takedowns, landing them effectively enough to put rounds in his favor, and just taking Yadong to deep waters. I like Simón here to get it done. Again, dark horse in the division for me. I think he gets another W in his name.
Yeah, this was a tough fight. I was really going back and forth. Yadong Song, obviously, he's with the Team Alpha Male guy, so he has wrestling. He has the takedowns, and that's Simón's route to win this fight. Ricky Simón's going to have to utilize that pace that he sets, get some wrestling going, and it's really hard to beat Simón when he's on that wrestling, when he's going for those takedowns. It's a tough one because if Yadong Song keeps it on the feet, he can really hurt and knock out Ricky Simón, just like Frankie Edgar knocked out Simón. So Simón can be knocked out, and Song Yadong has really accurate and powerful strikes. So this is a fight that can go 50-50 because Simón can definitely get this going 3 rounds. Yadong Song has been taken down by numerous fighters, and Ricky Simón is a lot better than a lot of these wrestlers taking him down. So Ricky Simon's gonna be able to get some takedowns. He doesn't get tired. It is a 5-round fight, which I think could favor Song Yadong because as the fight goes on, takedowns might be harder. And if Song Yadong is able to land, I can see him really hurting Ricky Simón here. Tough fight. I really think it can go either way. But I'm gonna reach here for Ricky Simón here to pull it off. It is a tough one though. That I really think this is a fight you just gotta watch. This fight's gonna be the best fight on the card, obviously. But both fighters are really skilled. Both fighters can take home the win. It's really close. We're looking at inches here. So I'm gonna go with Ricky Simón, but am I gonna bet it? No way.
All right. Well, speaking of betting, let's go to Vegas and let's take a look at the odds. Let's talk about underdog. Let's talk about parlay picks. And of course, let's start from the underdog perspective. I will read out each of them. So Hailey Cowan is the underdog versus Jamey-Lyn Horth. Trey Waters is an underdog. Again, we don't have the Journey Newson odds, at least on this sports book quite yet. So we'll exclude that one for now. Irina Alekseeva is an underdog. Cody Durden is an underdog. Who else do we have here? Fernando Padilla is an underdog. Buday versus Jake Collier is a pick'em, so we will consider both of those or either of those as underdog picks. Waldo Cortes-Acosta is an underdog. Cody Brundage, Michał Oleksiejczuk, and Yadong Song is a slight underdog.
Okay, I'm gonna go with Cody Durden.
All right, Cody Durden as your underdog pick. My underdog pick will be Cody, but a different one, Cody Brundage. I think there's some good value there against Rodolfo Vieira. And in terms of parlay picks, who are you taking a look at?
Okay, I really like Stephanie Edgar, Caio Borralho, and Josh Quinlan.
And Josh Quinlan.
Actually, I'm sorry. Marco Rogério de Lima.
All right. So 3 fights, Stephanie Edgar, Marcos Rogério de Lima, Caio Borralho. 3 fights, 2.62 on the odds. That means that $100 will get a total return of $262. For our bigger bettors, $250 will get a total return of $656. In terms of my parlay. We have one similar fight on there being the Caio Borralho fight. I'm also looking at a fighter you almost mentioned in Josh Quinlan. And I'm looking at Julian Erosa. I know he makes it dangerous, but I think given the circumstances, you're getting some pretty good odds with him. Now, those three fights would be a 3.49. $100 will return 348. For our bigger bettors, $250 will return 872. So let's sign off on that note. This has been UFC Fight Night. Yadong Song versus Ricky Simón, your full card prediction video presented by yours truly here at Boxing MMA Picks. Of course, make sure you hit the thumbs up on this video. We would appreciate that. Make sure you subscribe to the channel here at Boxing MMA Picks. And most importantly, we want to hear from you in the comments. Let us know how you feel about our picks. Let us know who your underdog pick is, what parlays you're looking at, or if you want additional insights, additional breakdowns on specific props or specific circumstantial situations in these fights, let that be known in the comments. And we're more than happy to have that conversation with you. But let's officially sign off. Let's see how this event goes. UFC Fight Night, Yadong Song versus Ricky Simón, presented by yours truly here at Boxing MMA Picks. He goes by Zan, I go by Harris, and in our usual fashion, let's get this money.
Let's get it.